All right, welcome everyone. We're here this evening for the 2024 Ironman 70.3 Chattanooga course preview and pre-race tips. Our presenter this evening is Coach Jennie Hansen. Turn it over to you, Jennie.
Thanks so much, Reem. So go ahead and get started on our course preview. So just a little bit about me. I've been a QT2 Systems athlete since 2012. I've been coaching with them since 2020-ish. I'm a former professional triathlete, current age group triathlete, and I have competed in both the previous Ironman Chattanooga and Ironman 70.3 Chattanooga, including coming in third place at the inaugural Ironman Chattanooga way back in 2014. All right, so just a little overview of our presentation. We're going to be going over the QT2 Systems, Five Cornerstones. We're going to talk a little bit about what the final weeks before the race should look like. We're going to go over some pre-race and check-in logistics. We'll talk a little bit about the day before and race morning, and we'll go through some details about the course and talk about how to tackle it in terms of pacing and fueling. All right, so just to review, our QT2 Systems 5 Cornerstones are training, restoration, and day-to-day nutrition, fueling, pacing, and mental fitness. And we'll talk about all of those in relation to the Chattanooga 70.3. So in terms of our final weeks, if we look at our training pacing cornerstone, we should be tapering about anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks out, maybe 1 to 2 for a 70.3. In this time, we should see our final key race-specific sessions should occur, or easy sessions, should try to simulate race conditions and intensities during this time. So some things to be cognizant of in your training is that you will be doing a river swim, which is a down current point-to-point swim. You'll be tackling a rolling bike course, and then you'll be tackling a rolling to a somewhat hilly run course. So you should be prepared for some punchy hills on both the bike and the run, and also some potential heat. We were just saying already, it's kind of like in the low mid 80s there generally. So for those of us coming from more northern climates, that's going to get pretty warm. And if anyone's local, train on the course if you can. And then also you want to test out your ride and run gear that you plan on using on race day, just to make sure everything's comfortable and running well. All right, so in the final few weeks, in terms of training and pacing, you also want to train at your race target. So if you're going to be using heart rate or rate of perceived exertion, pace or power, however you train by, however you race by, you want to be incorporating some of that into your training. And can remember that in those final last couple of weeks, there are no fitness gains to be made. So you really want to just be focusing on keeping up training frequency, keeping up your race-specific feel. Don't overtrain or panic train, err on the side of the recovery, and it's more important to be rested than sharp, including some days off. This picture was actually me a week before Ironman Chattanooga, just kind of deciding I had it riding and I was tired and laid down in a field and ended the ride early, but ended up having a great race the following week. So again, don't push anything in those final couple of weeks. Moving on to our nutrition and restoration cornerstone. So during workouts, you want to be making up the fluid that you lost and then consuming on top of that at least your body weight, at least half your body weight in ounces. Continue to keep up your nutrient density. So try to aim for 4 servings daily each of fruits and vegetables. The day prior to your long workouts, to have a replenishment meal that's high in carbs and low in fat. Make sleep a priority in this time. Aim for at least 7 to 8 hours per night. Take your anti-inflammatory measures, including your omega-3s, hydrate, reduce your stress, and sleep as much as you practically can. You want to start to kind of taper down caffeine in this time to have a little bit more receptiveness to it on race day. Target less than 800 milligrams a week. And don't forget your recovery drink after workouts. Don't let yourself get any sort of energy deficit or hole. Make sure you're replenishing that glycogen stores right after your training. Then moving on to race week, continue to eat a relatively normal diet during race week up until the final couple of days. If it's hot, which it will likely be, start to add some extra salt to your meals. Hydration's again to focus, so drink plenty of your fluid, either sports drink or water, for the 3 days leading up to the race, in addition to what is lost through workouts, especially in a warm weather race. Continue to taper down caffeine intake with none on the day prior to race day, so you'll be receptive to it on race day. 5 nights prior to the race, you'll want to do a fat load meal. And then 2 nights prior, start to carb load. So main bulk of your carb load should be 2 nights prior to the race and breakfast the day beforehand. And then continue to make sleep a priority. Aim for 8+ hours a night if possible. Otherwise, as much as you practically can. And again, stay off of your feet as much as possible. Don't stress, if that's your day-to-day life and your job, but otherwise try not to limit the amount of unnecessary time on your feet. And then fueling wise, in those final weeks, continue to fuel in accordance with your plan every session, using the products you plan to use on race day with the purpose of training your gut for race day. So especially when it's going to be a warm race, when you're going to be drinking a lot, really try to push those fluids in those final training sessions, make sure your gut is receptive to them, and continue to use your recovery drink. On race day, fueling may be the most important and most likely limiter on performance, but it's also the one you have complete control over, so be sure to practice it in the time leading up. Moving on to our mental fitness cornerstone. So leading up to the race, really try to reduce those external pressures, other people around you asking you about the race as much as, try to reduce it as much as you can. Focus on what you can control. So you can control your attitude, you can control your fueling. And trust your preparation. Everyone's been training hard. Everyone's been working hard. So this is the time to start trusting that. Begin visualization. Think about what a great performance will look like, and then think about how you respond to something that's differently. Just think of yourself responding calmly if there's a bike mechanical, or if you don't feel great, or anything along those lines. Then you want to list out your goals and targets. So your goals are going to be the things you have 100% control over, which is generally going to be your fueling and your attitude, and just how you respond to different challenges throughout the course of the day. Whereas your targets will be numbers-based, so things like your pace and your power. You want to internalize how those race-specific workouts feel, how you feel at those race intensities, and enjoy the feeling of extraordinary fitness that you've gotten to at this point. In terms of pre-race logistics, moving on to some of that, you'll want to sort of review the athlete guide, read through that, read over the race details, get your bike tuned up, make sure everything's ready to go there. It's nothing worse than getting within a couple of days of a race and realizing that something's up with your bike. Make your lists of everything you need to pack and purchase any items off of that you might need. Make sure you have what goggles you want, that any batteries that might need to be charged to replace or charged to replace. Start packing, confirm any Airbnb or hotel reservations. Plan on your race check-in time, Friday and Saturday, or your pre-race briefing, and your bike, well, that should just be bike gear check-in. All right, so in terms of what that looks like in Chattanooga, your athlete check-in will be at Ironman Village at Ross's Landing Park, right on the river there. That's the physical address for that is 200 Riverway Avenue. The athlete check-in is on Friday from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. and on Saturday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. You'll want to bring your active.com registration QR code and photo ID to check in. The earlier you can check in, the better bib number and racking position you'll get. And then also get to the expo early, limit your time there. Try not to be on your feet too much, walking around, looking at everything. Then we have our mandatory athlete briefings. Those are also at Ross's Landing. Those are Friday at 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. and also Saturday at 11 a.m., 1 p.m., and 3 p.m. We'll give you any information you might need about specifics on the course or, race morning and all that. There, so when you check in, you will get your race bib that's to be worn on the run. You'll get stickers for your bike frame and stem, your helmet, and your morning clothes bag. You'll get your swim cap. You'll get your bike checkout ticket to give to someone who's traveling with you in case they need to check out your bike for you. You'll get your wristband to be worn throughout the course of the weekend. And also, half Ironman, you'll get a morning clothes bag. And then once you're checked on Saturday, you will check in your bike and you will pick up your timing chip at that time. So that occurs Saturday from 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Also at Ross's Landing Park in the transition area. This will be bikes only. All your other gear can be brought in on race morning. And again, you'll get your timing chip at this time. All right, so the day before, some of our final checks, you might want to do a short shakeout, run, bike, or swim. Swim is a little bit questionable. It says in the athlete guide, there's just no swimming on the race course. And with it being a river, it's not really conducive to swimming more than one direction. So that might be a little bit harder to find a place to swim, but you can do a little bit of a shakeout. Make sure you charge your electronics, Garmin's, bike computers, so there's no surprises of that during the race. You'll want to set out your gear for race morning. So since just the bike is going to be checked in, you'll want to set out everything else, get that set ahead of time, including your tri-kit. Then you'll want your swim cap and goggles and wetsuit or swim skin for the swim. Make sure you have your timing chip. Set out your sunscreen. Then for the bike, you'll want to make sure you have your bike helmet, your bike shoes, and then your run shoes as well. Then set out any of your nutrition. So your bike run bottles, gels, bars, all of that. Make sure you have your watch, your bike computer, heart rate strap, body glide, and then socks, sunglasses, and race belt with bib number for the run. Set out your pre-race clothing so you're not scrambling on race morning, and also make sure you have what you want for your post-race clothing can be packed into your morning clothes bag, so that will be waiting for you afterwards. Make sure you have your race morning nutrition ready and any snacks or recovery beverage you want into your morning clothes bag. And then final checks for the day before, just kind of confirm your race morning logistics, finalize your plan for getting to the starting line, go to bed early, set a lot of alarms, and get your feet up and relax the best you can. All right, so race morning, our recommended breakfast is to start just focused on simple carbohydrates, fluid, electrolytes, and a small amount of protein. You don't want any fat, fiber, or extra vitamins or minerals that are just going to sit in the stomach and not really provide a purpose on the day. The core diet recommended breakfast is applesauce, banana, 1 scoop of whey protein, and sports drink. And you'll want to complete that eating 3 hours prior to the race start, so pretty early. And then once you complete your breakfast, you'll want to continue to sip on sports drink until the race starts and take in one more gel 15 to 20 minutes before getting in the water. In terms of like race morning logistics, so parking, transportation, it's kind of like, haven't been down there in a few years, but it's pretty much, what you can find on the streets or parking garages. You might have to walk a little bit, but usually it's not that too hard to find parking down there. Transition opens at 4:30 in the morning and closes at 6:15. The swim start is 1.4 miles upstream from where T1 is. So you will need to take a shuttle from the swim start, from T1 up to the swim start. So make sure you plan for that into your morning. Those shuttles run from 4:30 to 6:45 a.m. and no spectators are allowed on those shuttles. Those shuttles are athletes only. Well, before you leave transition, just make sure you review transition layout, make sure you know where your rack is, where your bike is. You'll want to drop off your morning clothes bag at the swim start, so take that on the shuttle with you. And then again, apply sunscreen and fuel as needed in terms of sports drinks and gels. So our general course overview, as we just said, the swim start is 1.4 miles upstream of T1. T1 and T2 are both at Ross's Landing Park, as is the finish. So the swim is, again, a point-to-point downstream swim. The bike will get more into this, but it's kind of a lollipop loop. You kind of go out about 11 miles, you make a loop, and then you come back to transition. It's mostly good road conditions. Some is a little more iffy, kind of closer to transition. Most of it is just kind of rural, quiet, rolling country roads. The run is 2 loops. It's a mix of some rolling sections, some sections that are relatively flat, and then some pretty hilly sections. There's some highway in there, there's some bike path, and then there's kind of the bridges that you go up and over. And there's a mix of sun and shade. There's some more shade on this highway, there's more sun on the highway, there's more shade on the bike path when you get on there. So looking at our swim. So swim start is 6:50 a.m. for the pros, and then the age group rolling start starts at 7 a.m. Water temperature will be announced race morning. Typically it's in the low to mid 70s, but be ready for anything. So it likely will be wetsuit legal, but not guaranteed. Wetsuits are permitted up to and including 76.1 degrees Fahrenheit and optional between 76.2 and 83.8, but you would not be eligible for awards or slots or anything like that. The swim is 1.4 miles instead of 1.2, but it is a current assisted downstream swim. So the degree of assist here, probably if you have any familiarity with the race, you've probably seen some like crazy fast Ironman swim times come out of this race before. It depends a little bit on the Tennessee Valley Authority. There's a dam upstream from the race, and they regulate how much flow is coming out of the dam, which can vary based on, you know, just the amount of precipitation they've got and water levels and stuff like that. So, you know, you might get a big boost, you might not get quite as much, but it will be downstream. Something they've told us in previous pro meetings I sat at, that the current's kind of greater the closer you are to the middle of the river. So kind of keep that in mind, a little bit more closer to the middle of the swim course. Buoys are about every 100 meters, and they should be on your right until there'll be a couple of final turn buoys to come into transition. You'll see yellow buoys on the first half and orange buoys on the second half, and then the red turn buoys at the end. There'll be kayaks, stand-up paddle boards for rest or assistance, but cannot move you forward, assuming they can stay in place with any current. So just some images of the swim here. I think the top left is actually from the full, so that will be a little bit further upstream than what you would, well, you'll be seeing. But again, kind of start off this rolling dock, this floating dock, jump into the water, start swimming downstream. Then you would kind of, the bottom picture is just coming towards the swim exit. You come out around to the arch and then run up out of the river, kind of up a ramp to transition. All right, some pacing and tips. This is a self-seated rolling start. Be realistic about your swim time, kind of seat according to what your non-current assisted time would be. The first 200 to 300 meters, take it out a little bit up tempo, and then try to settle into a tempo, kind of an RPE of about 7 to 8 out of 10. If you're anxious, start conservative and build. There's plenty of space in the river. There's no like crowded turns or anything in this swim course, so there's plenty of space to just kind of settle in and do your own thing. If you can, use other swimmers to your benefit to draft and sight off of. It's not quite as important with this course because you get the downstream benefit, but, you know, use other people to help you out. And then in the last couple 100 yards, start to kind of kick your legs a little bit to prepare for running up out into the water, into transition, you know, get a little bit more blood flow movement. All right, so moving on to our bike course. Like I was saying, we've got kind of this lollipop shape where we come out, go down, complete this loop, and then come back up to transition. And just elevation profile wise, it's very, very rolling, kind of net uphill, net downhill, and there's kind of one steeper climb in there, but a lot of up and down along the way. All right, so the first portion of this bike loop is, again, this sort of T1 to the start of Lollipop. You kind of go across the state line down into Georgia in that time. Nothing super crazy technical about it. There's a couple of railroad crossings in there, so be heads up over there. Usually they'll put down mats or carpets or something to make that pretty safe. Then once you get onto the bulk of the bike course is kind of this Lollipop loop here. So it, like I said, it's just sort of this very kind of rolling terrain. It's gradually up, then gradually down, but with a lot of like up and down along the way. And you have this one bigger hill. It's about like mile 40 to 45. It's when you make this turn onto Chickamauga Road here. You kind of go through a little bit of a town, make the turn, and then come to like the one bigger climb. It's not that bad, but it will get you sitting up and working a little harder. And another spot to note is this left-hand turn at the bottom of the loop here. This is a pretty sharp left, and it is on a descent. So, you know, there's always people out yelling, telling you to slow down. Heed those warnings. Be aware of that. Be very cautious coming into that turn there. And then the last 11 miles, you will repeat what you did before and just come back up, come back into transit, into the city and into transition. So just kind of some various images from the bike course. It's all just a lot of like gradual, you know, flat to gradually rolling country roads, you know, generally pretty good road conditions throughout that Lollipop. You know, there's some nice views of the hills. It's, you know, pretty rural, nice roads through there. So in terms of fueling on the bike course, aid stations are approximately every 15 miles on the bike. The bottle exchanges should have water. Of course, this is again big right now, but they should still have Gatorade thirst quencher. So not the endurance formula, just regular Gatorade mixed into bike bottles there. And also Mortal Hydration is now on course. They'll also have Morton gels, caffeine and non-caffeinated bars and bananas. Also the option, especially since there's not like a complete, I mean, the Gatorade thirst quencher is okay, just needs to supplement with sodium, but there's also the option, just especially for a half, to be able to, carry like 3 to 4 bottles of your own, have your own drink mix. Some of the new rules, we'll get a little bit more into that, but you cannot put a bottle down your race kit. So any bottle needs to be between the bars or on the frame or behind the saddle, not tucked into your race kit. And there's stricter rules on intentional littering, absolutely no discarding anything outside of aid stations. And be heads up at aid stations, watch out for rolling bottles, watch out for people stopping. There also should be porta potties at aid stations. So again, we've got kind of our comparison on the left too, just since I'll touch on that a little bit since this Mortal Hydration is coming out on course now. It is very, very low carb. It would not be a substitute for Gatorade. So if you have any inkling of using it, you will need to supplement carbs either with some other type of sports drink or more gels. All right, in terms of the Morton gels, the black Morton gels do not have caffeine. The white ones do have caffeine. Morton gels are very low in sodium. There's only 22 milligrams versus 200 milligrams in most other gels. So if you plan on using these, be sure you have some sort of sodium supplement, salt tab, base salt, anything like that with you. They are also high in caffeine. The caffeinated gels have 100 milligrams versus 20 to 25 or, like 35 to 50 in most other gels. And they're sort of that like kind of thick hydrogel consistency. All right, so in terms of pacing this bike course, you want to overall try to aim for sort of a U shape on the heart rate, where heart rate will naturally be a little higher coming out of the swim, running through transition, first getting on the bike. Then you want it to try to kind of settle down a little bit for about the middle half of the race. And then over the final quarter, try to bring it back up a little bit. So part of that will be determined by the terrain of this course. And some of the hills and rolling hills, but best as you're able, best as you can control, try to get in that U shape. And overall, you want the second half heart rate to be about 2 to 3 beats higher than the first half. As far as power goes, so this is a good course to try to use all your gears and quote unquote sort of flatten out the power. So try to meter out as evenly as you can on the rolling hills. So on any of the uphills, there's really only one big one, but you want to try to cap your power at about 60 watts over your expected half Ironman power. The descents will knock the average power down a little bit. Don't try to make it up. And again, you want your second half slightly higher. So don't overdo it when facing climbs. Try not to spike your power too much. Try not to burn those matches as you're going up the climbs. This course, because it's so rolling, it allows you to carry a lot of speed kind of through the uphills. So if you just kind of pedal through the downhills, it will help carry some speed up some of the smaller hills, kind of get you like halfway up there before you really start having to work a little bit harder. But be sure to use your gears as you go through this course. It's kind of tempting, you can carry a lot of speed up a hill and it's kind of tempting to say, oh, well, I can kind of grind up the last like 10, 15 meters of this hill in a high gear, and just don't do that. Be sure to be shifting a lot. Try to keep the power as even as you possibly can. Pace-wise will be affected again by the terrain and also by weather, if there's any sort of wind factor or heat factor in there. And you want to, depending on your experience level, and your training level and your fitness level, go for an RPE of about 6 to 8 on a scale of 10. As far as equipment, a tri-bike works very well on this course. You want to stay as aero as possible through the rolling hills. You can take it helps sometimes to just kind of take some position breaks when you're kind of cresting hills. And when if you kind of roll up, use some momentum up them. And then when you get to the top, slow down a little bit, sit up, shift, get a little bit of a break from the aero position. Helmet wise, depending on the temperature and how you handle heat, you might want to consider a standard one with more vents if it's going to be a hot day. Otherwise, aero helmet will be a good choice on this course. Whatever your normal gearing, your crank should be fine. Pretty much what you train with, provided you train on any hills. There's nothing super crazy in there that you need to think about, like compact cranks or anything like that. Wheel choice will depend on the wind forecast, your comfort, and your experience. This is typically, it's not a race that's necessarily like renowned for being an overly windy area, but anything is possible. Anything can happen anywhere. So just check the forecast beforehand. Stronger, more experienced riders and bike handlers will benefit from a rear disc wheel, and err on the side of your comfort level. All right. In terms of our race day penalties and rules. So our blue cards include a drafting violation, which is a 5-minute penalty. So you must keep 6 bike lengths between the bike's front wheel and the rear wheel of the cyclist in front of you. If you go to pass, it must be on the left. You must complete it within 25 seconds. If you are passed, you must make, quote, immediate and constant rear progress after being passed to drop out of the athlete's drafting zone. You don't have to necessarily slam on the brakes immediately, but it just needs to be clear that you are making an effort to drop back. If you get 3 violations, you will be given a red card and disqualified. And you also need to stop at, if you get a carded, you need to stop at the very next penalty tent you see. If you skip the penalty tent, then you will be disqualified as well. You can't just pick and choose where you want to serve your violation. Also on the bike, you can get a blocking violation. This is which is a yellow card. It's a 60-second penalty, and you also must stop at the next penalty tent. So blocking is considered when you're riding to the left of the lane. You should always keep right no matter what for safety. So do not block there. Your chin strap must be fastened whenever on the bike. So really just the first thing you should do in transition, and the last thing you should do is put your helmet on and take it off. You cannot use a cell phone, MP3 player, etc. in a distractive manner. So you can't be out on the bike course making calls or texting or taking pictures or playing music. Hopefully no one will do that. You cannot have outside assistance, so no one can run or ride alongside you or hand you nutrition. And you cannot cross the finish line with non-racers. So some of our new updated penalties and rules, again, the littering violation, intentional or careless littering is now a 5-minute penalty or a DQ. So again, that's if you're riding along and you throw a bottle to the side of the road intentionally and they see you, that's a 5-minute penalty. So don't do that, only discard things at aid stations. Zipper rule, you can unzip your top, but the zipper must be connected over the bottom and the top must be kept over the shoulders. One little trick my husband did before Galveston was just put a safety pin at the bottom of the zipper so he couldn't physically accidentally unzip it all the way. And then you're supposed to zip up for the finish line. That's not super strictly enforced, but that is a rule. Females are allowed to wear sports bras. So females, even if you're wearing a one-piece suit, you can fully unzip, pull down, and then roll it up, tuck it in, and run in a sports bra. That's still legal. Otherwise, if you're running just with your top flapping completely open, that's either a 30 to 60-second penalty, or if you don't remedy it promptly, that can lead to a disqualification. And then another new rule is equipment that has the effect of reducing wind resistance is prohibited, whether such equipment is worn under the athlete's clothing, over the athlete's clothing, or is otherwise attached to the athlete's body or athlete's bike. So this includes, but is not limited to, any bottles or hydration or any other insert located in the front of the athlete's race suit or an insert in the athlete's calf sleeves. This can lead to a disqualification. So again, the bottles on the front of the jersey can't do anymore or anything along those lines. And also protective screens, fuselages, fairings, or any other device or materials, including duct tape, added or blended into the structure with the intent to reduce or having the effect of reducing resistance to air penetration are prohibited. Aerodynamic assemblies and protuberances on the head tube or elsewhere are prohibited, provided that the use of adhesive tape, including duct tape, does not fundamentally alter or enlarge the general shape of the structure. Adhesive tape may be affixed to the bike, e.g. to cover valve cutout of rear disc wheel, to cover bolts access, etc. And that can also lead to a disqualification. So that's just a lot of words. I mean, you can obviously add water bottles, that kind of stuff to your bike, but just don't go be like 3D printing things to add to your aero bars. People have done that. Just ride your bike as is. All right, moving on to our run course. So our run course is 2 loops. First one is just a little bit longer because you do kind of this little short out and back immediately out of transition. You pretty much come out of transition, you'll come up Riverfront Parkway. You come back on the Riverwalk. You'll do this kind of little loop where you go over the Veterans Bridge, you do a short out and back. Then you kind of come back over Walnut Street Bridge, and then you repeat your loop. And then the second loop, you'll kind of come back down, loop around, and go to the finish. Usually there's some pretty decent spectator support along the Riverwalk, and the Walnut Street Bridge is another kind of pretty popular area to get some spectator support. So breaking that down a little bit further. So if we kind of look at our sections of the run, we've got kind of this first, like about 1.25 miles going from transition, where you come out of transition, kind of come up along the path, and then you kind of come up this little kicker onto Riverfront Parkway here. It's a little bit of a hill kind of up onto the parkway. And then from there, you settle into the parkway here. It goes down to about the 3-mile mark, where you'll make a little bit of U-turn and then come back on the Riverwalk. Once you get to the end of you'll come off the Riverwalk onto this Battery Place Road there to sort of end that section of the run. So this is sort of a mixture. It's a kind of, you come onto the road, then you're on a bike path. It's a mix of sun and shade. There's, like I said, that little sort of kicker that comes out onto the Riverfront Parkway, and then it's mostly kind of flat, a couple rollers on Riverfront Parkway, and then the Riverwalk is generally pretty flat. And then you'll start to climb as you come up Battery Place to come up to the bridges. So then you come up to your little bridge loop here. So this is kind of coming up to Veterans Bridge here off the Riverway on Battery Place. And then the Veterans Bridge is sort of like gradual up, gradual down. Then come down off of it. You'll do this little out and back that's a little bit of like an uphill out, downhill back. Then you'll kind of climb up again till you get to the Walnut Street Bridge, which is fairly flat itself. Come over the Walnut Street Bridge, and then you'll repeat this. So this sort of hilly portion in here represents kind of this portion from coming up off the Riverwalk Trail, coming up to the bridge, up and over the bridge. Then there's like the little bit of a kicker hill here, and then more climbing coming up onto the other bridge. Then you'll come back down and have to climb back up onto Riverfront Parkway. So it's, probably like 2.5 to 3 miles total where you'll be hitting these hills. They're all about like 1/2 to 1/4 mile long. So they're not super long. They're probably about, depending on what source you look at, that's the Garmin file there. It varies a little bit different from the Ironman file. So take both of them with a grain of salt. That's probably the truth lies somewhere in the middle. But they're, about 25 to 75 feet hills. So they're not unmanageable, but some of them are kind of kickers. They're a little bit steep. They do pack a punch. And so, just it's kind of one after another for like this little portion of the course. And it's right at the end of the loop too, which makes it harder. And some of these downhills are kind of like the quad busting fast downhills there. So, it's hard to just kind of like recover and come back up the hill. So it is challenging through there, but it's not like, it's runnable. I mean, it will be, and then you can get some nice downhill to the finish as well. So just some images of the run course here. So here we have Veterans Bridge, which is, pretty kind of like gradual up, gradual down off the bridge, sort of typical. This is the Riverwalk, the part of the bike path. You'll get a little bit of like some concrete through there. You'll get some boardwalk through there. It's really pretty. It's actually a very nice run. It can get a little bit narrow, but it's usually not. There's worse Ironman run courses in terms of being narrow, but it can get a little crowded through there. And then this is, kind of the sort of, if you've seen pictures of this race, you've probably seen pictures of the Walnut Street Bridge. It's this, pedestrian bridge you come back over coming towards the finish. Again, it's sort of this wood boardwalk surface. And then finally, this is actually, I'm running the opposite, the full course used to run sort of like the opposite direction. So I'm not running the correct way here. But this is just to give you an idea of what Riverfront Parkway looks like. All right, so for race day, for our run fueling, aid stations will be approximately every mile. They'll have water, they'll have electrolyte drink, which again, they should be a mixture of Morton or Mortal and also the regular Gatorade Thirst Quencher. Should be Red Bull, Morton gels, bars, cola, chips, pretzels, bananas, and then I think I forgot to take some of this out from the full Ironman, but there should be ice and sponges hopefully to cool off. And also the option of carrying your own. So in terms of our pacing for race day on the run, so general rule of thumb is to take your bike average heart rate and add 5 to 10 beats to that and kind of try to build to that on the run. If you pace by run power, you want that's actually a good metric to pace by on this course because of the rolling nature, because some of these hills, it will help kind of govern you to try to stay as even as possible over the terrain within reason. Obviously, some of the steeper hills will spike it a little bit and it'll be hard to keep up on some of the more steep downhills. But, you know, again, it's a good metric to use. The second half should be as close to the first as possible. And don't do it out of T2, especially kind of up that first hill up onto Riverfront Parkway. Don't blow your whole race kind of trying to get to some specific pace on that hill. It will be a little bit shorter, slower, and it should be. Pace, again, will be variable because there are hills on this course. It's rolling. Other than sort of some of the miles on the riverfront and the Riverway Trail, every mile does have some sort of elevation gain or loss. So I think there's maybe like 2 or 3 miles on this whole course that like would be considered flat. Everything else will have some kind of hill. So don't stress if a mile split pops up and seems slow. You'll, get a downhill mile in there too. So, don't take pacing too much to heart. Try to pace more by heart rate. And if you have power available, by power, and keep those as even as possible. So, and again, don't chase pace through the rolling hills, just sort of stick to your targets and let the pace fall where it falls. And overall, if you're using RPE, again, depending on your fitness and experience level, can go for anywhere from about to 6 to 8 on a scale of 10. All right, so in terms of our race day mental fitness, you want to focus on goals as your #1 priority. So again, goals are the items that we have 100% control over, which are our attitude and following our fueling plan. So, keep a positive attitude out there and be willing to deal with whatever the day throws your way. Secondly, focus on your targets. So focus on power, focus on heart rate, not pace in this course, maybe not quite as much, but, focus on executing your race plan. Stick to your plan, including how you react when something doesn't go according to plan. And outcomes should be left to the second half of the run, if at all. So these are things like if you're chasing specific place or time, world championship slot, this is where you want to kind of bear down and really put it out there and try to kind of chase those things down. Be who you are and show appreciation for supporters, volunteers, family, and friends. All right, so in terms of our race cutoffs, all athletes will have 8.5 hours to complete the entire race from when they cross the smart mat at the swim start. Any athlete who does not complete the event in 8.5 hours will be designated as a DNF. So, and of course, everything counts in your overall time. So the swim cutoff, I think, is a little bit longer because of that extra 0.2 miles, but it is 1 hour and 20 minutes. And then you will have 10 minutes after the swim course cutoff to get out of T1. The bike course cutoff is 5 hours, 30 minutes of total swim, T1, and bike time. There is an intermediate cutoff on this bike course, which is 3 hours and 30 minutes after the last athlete enters the water at mile 31. So when that last athlete gets in, clock starts ticking and you have 3 hours and 30 minutes to get past mile 31 of the bike course. And then T2 will be closed 10 minutes after the bike course cutoff. And then again, the overall court cutoff is 8 hours and 30 minutes. And there is a intermediate cutoff there, which is 7 hours after the last athlete enters the water at the start of the second run loop, which at mile 6.6. So for spectators, if people are coming out, want to catch a glimpse of you, They can use the Ironman athlete tracking app to keep a track of where you are. You can kind of come up with some pre-agreed locations to spot them along the course. Swim, again, no spectators on the shuttles to the swim start, but it's possible to kind of at least catch a glimpse of everyone swimming underneath the Walnut Street Bridge, or they can catch you at the swim exit at Ross's Landing. Bike, not the most spectator-friendly bike course, but your fans can catch you initially out of transition. And then if they're really motivated, they can take some back roads to spots along the Lollipop. The Chickamauga kind of town is a good place. My husband, one of the years I was racing, managed to find somewhere with farm animals to watch me and take pictures of mini ponies while I was racing. And then on the run, the Walnut Street Bridge is pretty popular. And then anywhere along the Riverway Path or the road is, a good place to catch. If someone's really motivated, they can kind of go back and forth between the two and, walk out a little bit, go back and forth between the two and catch you a fare like 4 times total. All right, so post-race, gear checkout is after the race from 2 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. You have to either have your athlete wristband, or if somebody's checking out your bike for you, they need to have the ticket. If you can come back out to cheer, hang out, we should have a QT2 team tent out there. Slot allocations and awards will occur 4 p.m. at the awards tent in Ironman Village. So there will be 45 Ironman 70.3 World Championship slots to New Zealand given out, plus an additional 15 slots for women through the Women Through Try initiative. The top 5 women in each age group will be offered Ironman World Championship slots to Nice, but this will be given via email in the week after the race. So don't panic if you're there and that's not being handed out. That's through email. Morning clothes bag pickup will occur again after the race next to transition. And then some other things to think about post-race are just kind of support the local community. This is a race location where they really like having the race. They're very supportive of the race. I mean, there have been years of sort of disgruntled locals on the bike course, but try to, just be good stewards of the community. Consider shopping at some of the local shops and restaurants. Be courteous and tip well. Just be polite. Make someone's day better. Get out and explore a little bit. There's some fun stuff to do downtown, like the aquarium's pretty fun. There's some nice restaurants down there. So, try to have a little bit of an experience as well. All right. Finally, that's how you can follow us. It's QT2 Systems or the Coure Diet. And any questions?